Hello, this is Susan reading to you from the Provincetown Banner. Today is Thursday, October 10th. In our first story, Dennis Man worked for Carter, Ford Escort, Secret Service, Birthdays, by Denise Coffey. Dennis. Photographs line the stairs to the second floor of Robert Kelly's home near Fallon's Pond. The pictures are a who's who of American politicians, men Kelly worked for and rubbed elbows with over his career. President John F. Kennedy, Senator Edward M. Kennedy, and Senator Robert F. Kennedy, Walter Mondale, Speaker of the House Thomas Tip O'Neill, President Ronald Reagan. But the man whose face is in more photos than any other is President Jimmy Carter. Carter will celebrate did celebrate his 100th birthday on Tuesday, October 1st. The oldest living U.S. president has been receiving hospice care at his home in Georgia since February of 2023. Kelly, an advance man for Carter. Kelly remembers his years fondly serving as an advance man for Carter during his presidency from 1977 to 1981, and he remembers two birthday celebrations with the former president. The first was in 1980 at a Ford plant in Wayne, Michigan, when President Carter was invited to drive the first Ford Escorts off the assembly line. After the event, Carter was presented with a huge sheet cake, Kelly said. Another time was at the opening of the Jimmy Carter Presidential Library and Museum in Atlanta, Georgia. It was October 1st, 1986, Carter's 62nd birthday. They had a tiered cake so big they couldn't get it out the door, Kelly said with a laugh. As the advance man, Kelly planned details of events down to the minute. He planned campaign stops, fundraising events, and meetings with national and world leaders. He coordinated with the White House advance team, the press advance team, Secret Service, and a host of other agencies on national and international visits the president made. He recalls Carter's shining moments and those he handled with what Kelly called kindness, diplomacy, integrity, and bravery. How to be responsible for a president. At an event in L.A., Carter met with then-Governor Jerry Brown and an attorney general from Mexico. 15 minutes before Carter was scheduled to speak, the lead Secret Service agent told him that there were 3 possible assassins in the crowd. Carter looked at his watch and said, "I go on in 12, Kelly said. That was all he said. One Secret Service agent dressed as a hippie hauled one suspect out, and other agents grabbed 2 other men before Carter went on stage, according to Kelly. They were there to get the Mexican official, he said. The Boston Globe was the only paper to report it." Did Carter deserve the bad press? Carter's reputation as a Sunday school teacher, volunteer with Habitat for Humanity, Nobel Peace Prize winner, and humanitarian is well documented. But his critics cite his handling of the Iran hostage crisis, record-high inflation, and the gas shortage, among other things, as shortcomings of his presidency. One term was all Carter could muster before Reagan unseated him in the 1980 election. Did Carter deserve the bad press? Absolutely not, Kelly rejoined. Kelly contends Carter was blamed for an economy that he inherited from President Gerald Ford. Carter put solar panels on the roof of the White House and created the Department of Energy and the Department of Education, he said. Think of how far ahead we would be if solar power had been pursued back then. Think of where our infrastructure would be now, Kelly said. Instead, Reagan took the solar panels off the roof, he said. A summer job with Barnstable Police. Politics has been at the center of Kelly's life since shortly after he started working as a summer seasonal police officer in Barnstable. He met plenty of people while he was stationed in front of the Kennedy family compound in Hyannisport, working traffic details early in the morning. I'd be at my post at 7:05 a.m., and who would be there having a cup of coffee? Sergeant Shriver, JFK's brother-in-law, Ted Kennedy, Kelly said. That's what started it. Boston connections propelled his political journey into state and national arenas. Kelly, his wife Patricia, and their 3 children lived in Dennis, but his family could go for long stretches without seeing him depending on whether his job took him to Kansas or Korea. Patricia Kelly said it was an interesting life, but it could get lonely. Kelly worked on U.S. Senator George McGovern's campaign for president in 1972. He spent 1975 and 1976 working on Edward N. Kennedy's U.S. Senate campaign and was involved in the opening of the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum in Boston. He worked on Walter Mondale's campaign for president in 1984. He gave Ohio Democrat and former astronaut John Glenn a hand on his New Hampshire campaign when he was in the running to be Michael Dukakis's vice presidential running mate in 1988. And he was invited to go to Northern Ireland in 1995 with President Bill Clinton. Kelly graduated with a history degree from Boston State College, now the University of Massachusetts in Boston. A wedding venue, labor talks, and a low budget stood outside the Oval Office talking about where to bring the Iran hostages once they were released. Also, Carter's Labor Day trip to Ohio to talk with the United Auto Workers, a snowstorm that threatened Carter's address at Georgia Tech, and the low-budget hotel Kelly recalled in Houston. There was also the time President Carter's people had to find another wedding venue in Lynn, Massachusetts, for a bride whose ceremony was upended by his visit. When we were leaving Lynn in the presidential motorcade, James Earl Carter wanted to go see the girl, Kelly said, so we went right to the wedding. Kelly never saw Carter mad, but once at a Boston fundraiser, Kelly drew a blank when Carter asked who was introducing him. Luckily, Kelly's boss provided it shortly after, but not before Carter's eyes gave him away. The last time Kelly saw Carter was in 2007 when he spoke at Brandeis University. When he walks into a room, the places are electric because they understand. First, he's honest, Kelly said, and he never lied. In our next story, tiny tropical fish rescued in Orleans' Little Pleasant Bay by Heather McCarran. On September 25th, Tim Silva and Danielle Orcutt had a rare tropical visitor to the family oyster grant in Orleans' Little Pleasant Bay. It was a tiny, bright blue angelfish, hundreds of miles from its home among the reefs of the Caribbean. I was going down the line, flipping the bags, and I noticed it was more like a bluish color, Silva said. I was like, what is that? Then I noticed it was moving, and I realized it was a fish, and I was like, this is kind of crazy. It was cold water already, and it was weird that it was here. Less than an inch in length, the fish is likely an accidental visitor the New England Aquarium is numbering among the Gulf Stream orphans that end up here from time to time. Silva and Orcutt rescued it from the cooling waters of their Atlantic Basin Bay and gave it over to Wild Care Incorporated, a wildlife rehabilitation and education organization based in Eastham. It has since been taken into the care of the New England Aquarium. It's very unusual for a blue angelfish to turn up, though, according to Mike O'Neill, Associate Curator of Aquatic Collections at the aquarium. The fish found in Orleans is the northernmost reported blue angelfish, according to Gulfstream Orphan Project records and iNaturalist.org. Over the years, there have been dozens of blue angels reported in the northeast U.S., but most are along the coast of New Jersey and Long Island, with fewer reaching Rhode Island and Massachusetts, O'Neill said via email. an eye-catching spot of color in Little Pleasant Bay. Accustomed to the drab brown and greenish creatures that share the waters with their oysters, the couple's attention was immediately caught by the jewel-toned blue and yellow fish with black and white stripes. Silva said they work with bagged oysters, and every 2 weeks they go out to flip the bags as part of routine maintenance. Even amidst the 5,000 oyster bags they have in the bay, the diminutive Caribbean orphan stood out. Silva described the discovery as wonderful and a bright spot during the routine chore. With the arrival of fall, the couple knew the water temperatures could plummet unpredictably and realized the little fish wouldn't survive that. We've never received a call about a tropical fish. At Wildcare, the little fish instantly captured hearts. Stephanie Ellis, executive director and wildlife rehabilitator at the organization, said the fish is one of the tiniest and most unique patients we've ever had at Wildcare. We've never received a call about a tropical fish that I am aware of, she said. The most unusual animal we have ever cared for at Wildcare Incorporated was a masked booby, an immature bird that was blown in with Hurricane Jose in 2017. The blue angelfish was in their care from September 25th until September 28th, when O'Neill came to pick it up. It, too, is a juvenile of its species, H. bermudanense. As the species matures, O'Neill said, their coloration changes, and adult blue angelfish no longer exhibit any vertical white stripes and instead showcase yellow, teal, and blue coloration. A Gulf Stream orphan. The fish rescued from Orleans, likely only a few months old, is just about 2 centimeters in length. The timing of its rescue is fortuitous. Shallow coastal water temperatures in New England are still warm enough that these expatriated juvenile tropical fish are able to survive in this region, O'Neill said. However, as those temperatures drop through the 60s and below, the coastal habitats of New England will be beyond their tolerance. O'Neill, a participant in the Gulf Stream Orphan Project, explained that tropical and subtropical species often get dispersed via the Gulf Stream. Seasonally, we see these fishes reside in coastal waters of the northwest Atlantic, while environmental conditions like water temperature are tolerable for them, he said. The relative abundance of tropical visitors in any given year, O'Neill added, is likely the result of a variety of factors including Gulf Stream activity, weather patterns, spawning activity, and populations of the species in their native range. This year, he noted, appears to be a more abundant year than in recent years past based on the volume of sightings reported thus far. The fish's appearance here is of note for those involved with the Gulf Stream Orphan Project, which is a network of coastal marine conservation organizations and citizen scientists interested in gathering data on unusual tropical and subtropical fishes dispersed to the northwest Atlantic by the Gulf Stream. Due to the broad geographic distribution of these fish, the project relies on data collaboration amongst participating organizations and the iNaturalist platform to gather as much information as possible to learn about these fish and their impact on coastal ecosystems, O'Neill said. Fish rescued in Orleans will live at New England Aquarium. Beyond data gathering, he said, a small subset of the reported fish may also be collected as exhibit specimens depending on our exhibit collection planning process, as in the case of this blue angelfish. New England Aquarium currently has a handful of GSOs that were collected in past years before they would have otherwise perished and now live on exhibit in Boston, O'Neill said. Likewise, the little fish Silva and Orcutt found in Orleans will be added to the aquarium's collection in one of its many Caribbean-centric habitats. Silva said he's pleased to know the fish will remain with the aquarium, and the couple is excited about the prospect of taking their 5-year-old to see the fish and its fellow tropical reef dwellers at the aquarium. It's going to be pretty cool to tell our 5-year-old how Mommy and Daddy saved that fish, he said. And in a photograph on the front page, there is a picture of volunteer Jesse Rosinski of North Truro taking a peek under a pile of seaweed looking for hidden pieces of trash. Volunteers were out at Bowston Beach in Truro on September 29th, starting at 8 a.m., picking up trash on the third day of the Great Beach Cleanup. The group of almost 20 volunteers, led by CCS Marine Debris and Plastics Program Director Laura Ludwig, ended their day at High Head in Truro. A trash tally will be done in Truro in October. And in our final front page story, petitioners. Stop Holtec appeal to dump wastewater into Cape Cod Bay by Heather McCarran, Cape Cod Times, Plymouth. With Plymouth Harbor as the backdrop, State Rep. Dylan Fernandez, D. Falmouth, on Wednesday joined leaders of the Association to Preserve Cape Cod and the Cape Cod Commercial Fishermen's Alliance to announce a new effort to keep leftover wastewater from the former Pilgrim Nuclear Power Station out of Cape Cod Bay. The group, comprising 19 people representing various environmental and fishing interests, is looking to intervene in an appeal Holtec Decommissioning International LLC filed with the state's Office of Appeals and Dispute Resolution on August 16th. That appeal is related to the company's proposal to discharge up to 1.1 million gallons of industrial wastewater, treated beforehand but still containing some radionuclides, from the shuttered Plymouth plant as part of its cleanup and decommissioning. The intervener's petition was filed on September 19th, Fernandez said. The group also includes the Cape Cod Chamber of Commerce, Cape and Islands Real Estate Board, 3 Cape Cod aquaculturists, a Cape Cod Bay charter fishing captain, 4 members of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, and private citizens. Holtec seeks appeal. Petitioners look to stop it. Identifying Cape Cod Bay as a protected ocean sanctuary as defined under the Massachusetts Ocean Sanctuaries Act, the State Department of Environmental Protection on July 18th determined that Holtec is prohibited from dumping or discharge of industrial waste into protected state waters and turned down its 2023 application to do so. According to Holtec, treated water has been discharged into the bay within safe limits since the plant began operations in 1972. The company argues that the permits granting discharges were issued prior to the Ocean Sanctuary Act. Therefore, they are grandfathered. The company further argues that the Federal Nuclear Regulatory Commission has the sole responsibility of deciding on discharge of radiological liquid effluent under the Atomic Energy Act and has authority that supersedes the state. APCC Executive Director Andrew Gottlieb doesn't agree, arguing that the 1972 Ocean Sanctuaries Act specifically prohibits the release of new industrial wastewater into ocean sanctuaries like Cape Cod Bay. Once the facility stopped generating power, its historic claim to grandfathered rights to discharge into the bay terminated, Gottlieb said. The stakes are high. Fernandez said the group filed the motion to intervene so we can communicate the very real impact this dumping would have on our region. The blue economy in Plymouth and on the Cape and Islands is worth $1.4 billion, supports over 200,000 jobs, and it depends on the cleanliness of our waters, Fernandez said. Blue economy tourism alone is worth $650 million, and we have a fishing industry that's into the hundreds of millions as well. He said dumping treated nuclear wastewater into Cape Cod Bay harms the region's ability to market itself as a tourist beach and seafood destination. The dumping also harms the fishing industry, he said. Seth Rolbing, Senior Outreach and Policy Advisor with the Fishermen's Alliance, said the fishermen appreciate the environmental and economic fallout from the dumping. It's also economic and it's psychological. We know that smart people may be prone to not eat beautiful fish, lobsters, and oysters if they find that is coming out of waters that have been treated in the way that Holtec wants to treat these waters, he said. Rolbine said releasing wastewater into the bay is the company's cheap way out rather than spending money to have it hauled elsewhere to an approved disposal site. Fernandez also said that elsewhere wastewater disposal has been done in other ways that don't involve putting it into the community's natural environment. The Yankee Power Plant in Vermont hauled wastewater by rail to a disposal site out west, he said, so this is not a novel idea. Holtec, goal is to safely clean up sites. In an email on Wednesday, Holtec International's Director of Governmental Affairs and Communications, Patrick O'Brien, said, as the country continues to realize that future energy demand for clean baseload power will only come from nuclear power, we continue to strive to be the leader in the industry for future nuclear deployment. Part of that goal, he said, is to safely clean up former nuclear power plants so they can be reused. Our goal to clean up Pilgrim in 8 years has already been delayed as a result of the challenges to safe discharges, which had occurred for over 45 years of plant operation and are regulated by the NRC, O'Brien said. He said Holtec will continue to work through the appeal process. Our goal is to provide facts over fear about the reality of safe, clean baseload power and help lead a clean energy future. He said, what's next? The next step is for the Dispute Resolution Office to determine who qualifies for intervener status. Gottlieb said the appeal could be lengthy, but his group will ask for an expedited schedule. Hopefully they will read the writing on the wall, listen to what Governor Healy said, which is accept the no and move on and not draw this out further by going to state or federal court. Without that, the appeal could take 18 to 24 months. In another story, lobsters, bears, sleds, and a library. Carter's in Provincetown in 1951 by Jacob Greenberg. A submarine with K-1 on her conning tower appeared in 1951 off Provincetown, Massachusetts. Strange, the Provincetown Advocate newspaper reported of the submarine. The first of a new hunter-killer class of post-World War II submarines, the K-1 had been dispatched from a boatyard in Groton, Connecticut, to the outermost town on Cape Cod for testing. Inside the submarine, as it turns out, was someone who would go on to be the 39th President of the United States, Jimmy Carter. Carter was the submarine's executive officer, or XO, and known then as James Earl Carter, Jr. When not on duty, those officers and men on board the U.S. Navy vessel would swarm the streets and bars of what was at the time a fishing village and artist colony. Carter served as executive officer, engineering officer, and electronics repair officer in 1951 aboard the K-1. The submarine was undergoing testing off Provincetown to be used in new submarine versus submarine warfare. The use of Provincetown waters in 1951 for Electric Boat Company submarine trials restarted a practice established many years earlier and carried on until the start of World War II, the Provincetown Advocate reported in 1951. The K-1 was short, about 2/3 the length of the fleet-type submarine, and small, with 750 tons displacement instead of the more usual 1,500 tons. It was considered an experimental attack submarine to be used in new submarine versus submarine tactics. Carter and his wife Rosalind moved their young family to Provincetown for the duration of Carter's assignment. We rented an upstairs apartment in a big old house, and there the children and I could sit at the breakfast room table and watch the K-1 operate and dive just offshore. Rosalind Carter wrote of their stay at the tip of the world as she recalled it in her 1984 memoir, First Lady from Plains. In the winter, I found the town library and finally got around to reading War and Peace, and we bought the boys their first sleds, even though they had to compete with us to use them. In 1952, Carter was promoted to lieutenant and shortly thereafter was reassigned to help introduce the new nuclear-class submarines to the fleet. He would retire from the Navy the following year after his father died to return to Georgia to manage his family interests. The K-1 was named the USS Barracuda in 1958, according to the Naval History and Heritage Command website. The submarine was deployed primarily along the East Coast and then used for training. It was decommissioned in 1973 in Charleston, South Carolina, and sold for scrap metal. And finally, in Curious Cape Cod, Shutting Down Your Outdoor Shower by Eric Williams. For me, there are only 2 seasons on Cape Cod. They are defined by the happy time when I can use my outdoor shower and the sad time when I am stuffed indoors. And here we are on the precipice of the great change. Giving up the grand pleasure of outdoor showering is a hard thing to do, but bad things can happen if you take it too far into cold weather. So let's take a look at best practices. Mike Matthews, president of the Cape Cod Outdoor Shower Company, said there are hardy Cape Codders who try to keep their outdoor showers going all the way to Thanksgiving weekend. But he cautioned that the risk-reward of such a daring practice could be problematic in the pipe department. You want to be winterized by Halloween, he said. Doc Taylor, Falmouth weather guru and retired meteorologist, wrote in an email that he winds down his outdoor shower use as October dawns. As for shutting it down and draining the pipes, probably right after the middle of October. While outdoor shower setups can slightly differ, Matthews said shutting off the water supply to the shower and draining the pipes are the key steps to take. Usually there's a little nut-like thing that allows you to drain water from the pipe after the valve is shut off, usually in the basement. Then head out to the shower and open the controls like you are going to take a shower. Chances are you'll be able to get at least a little more water out of the pipes. It's advisable, he said, to leave the controls in the open position for the winter. Just make sure the water supply is off. This has been Susan reading to you from the Provincetown Banner. Today is Thursday, October 10th.